going to start with our norms today. And I just want you all to know that we have a few things we expect while you're participating in our chat today. And the first one is we want you to be present, ask questions if you're confused, or add comments if you have a connection or want to share some ideas. That's good for the group. We want you obviously to participate. We want you to be open to new ideas. What we're talking about today is a really cool topic of combining content area and creativity. So we're excited, and we hope if you hear one of our ideas that you share with others today. And now I'm going to give it over to Dominique to go over our objectives.
Thanks. We have our objectives for today. First, we're going to identify the 4 areas of creativity. And Jenny's going to go in deeper detail about those 4 areas. We're going to apply the 4 areas of creativity to our ELA standards. And we're going to create lessons for students combining those ELA standards and creativity.
Thanks so much, Dominique. So now we want to throw a question out to you. So if you're online, if you will, please participate with us in the chat, because what we want to know is, what's the first thing that you think of when you hear the word creativity? So the first thing that pops in your head, if you would, just type it in the chat, and we'll begin this conversation about what creativity is. So what do you think of creativity? What's the first thing that comes to mind? Student choice, art, music. These are things that are popping up in chat about what creativity is. I think a lot of us go straight to art and thinking about the ways artists are creative. So Jenny's going to walk us through the definition that actually our district uses when identifying gifted and talented students. So Jenny, will you take us through what creativity means?
Sure. I love that many of you are answering music. A lot of times when we think of creativity, most of us think artistically. But I want you to keep in mind that some of our most creative thinkers are mathematical and scientists running through experiments. And that's just a different type of creative thinking. So in the gifted office, we define creativity as having these 4 components, or making sure you're meeting these 4 components. The first one is fluency, and that's the student's ability to just generate a lot of ideas. The next one is flexibility, and that's the ability to come up with different types of ideas. And so I always like to use a concrete example here. If you were asked, what could you list all of the ways you could use a paperclip? Obviously, you could start brainstorming that in your head. And most students, when I ask them this question, list mostly tools. That's not very flexible. That's fluent. They can come up with tons of ideas on how the paperclip is a tool, but very rarely do we see them coming up with something besides a tool, maybe a piece of artwork, or they're going to give it as a gift to someone else, or it's going to bring people together somehow. So that would be an example of flexible thinking. And then, of course, originality is the one when most people think of creative thinking, they think of originality. It's this one-of-a-kind, innovative idea. And we use the top 2 parts, fluency and flexibility, everyone, to generate that one-of-a-kind idea. The hopes are, if you're fluent and flexible enough in your classroom with your kids, then that one-of-a-kind idea shows up. Originality. And then, of course, the last one is an English teacher's dream come true, and that's elaboration. And that's just adding more, explaining, embellishing, all of those good skills, showing and not telling in your writing. Making sure you're supporting arguments in science, elaborating with examples and evidence, things like that. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Kerri to continue.
So we wanted to just have Jenny define that so we know what creativity is in terms of the work we're going to combine with ELA today. So why include creativity in our instruction? And really, we're focused on ELA today, but creativity can be connected with any content you teach. And we know that creativity increases student engagement, and it increases the level of rigor in any assignment that you are giving to students. Any task that you create that has any one of those 4 components of creativity in it will automatically increase the level of thinking and promote critical thinking. We know that it encourages students to be risk takers and have that growth mindset that they can try things and do things they've never thought of before. It fosters motivation. If you're thinking about that gifted and talented student in your classroom and they have these fun activities that are really making them think outside of the box, they're going to be more motivated to learn. And really that goes for any student in the classroom, not just our gifted and talented kiddos. It promotes achievement across content areas. So we know that creativity can touch every single content area that we teach, and it will enhance the achievement for all of our students. And it increases the creative thinking and problem solving. So as Jenny said, we can connect this to math and science. We need creative problem solvers right now, today, to help us solve this pandemic. So we really want to reinforce this problem solving idea and creative thinking idea by including these skills in our instruction. So how does creativity really connect to ELA? So we're going to give you some specifics, and Dominique is going to share with you some ideas.
All right, thanks, Kerri. How do our ELA standards and creativity, how are they perfect companions? Well, ELA offers an abundance of opportunities for students to challenge ideas, problem solve, and think critically. It opens up for students to be able to have conversations, debates. ELA naturally offers activities that are conducive to creative thinking, webbing, brainstorming, visualizing, considering different points of view, symbolizing, and many more. Along with creative thinking, allows students to find multiple correct answers. And I love this piece the most. Students understanding that there may not be that one answer. And I think that gives students opportunity to feel like it's a safe place to share their thinking. So I really, really love that. It encourages different thinking when there is more than one answer. Offers an endless amount of creative, literary, and informational text that can be used.
I love that you stressed, Dominique, in multiple answers, because from the gifted perspective, the older gifted kids, especially general intellectual kids who are just super brainy, they're very hard fixed on right and wrong. And I really think we need to do a better job for all kids, but specifically creatively gifted kids and our general intellectual kids, and teaching them that there are gray answers, and that there are lots of right answers, and then so to solve problems.
Yeah, Jenny, that's why I love that piece the most. That gives every kid an opportunity to express themselves and share their ideas in a safe place.
It's great.
All right, thanks so much, ladies. And we're going to move into a framework that will help you kind of think of you can think of it as a planning tool, rather. So what we have done is we've taken a standard, an ELA standard, at every grade level, not every grade level, let me take that back, first, third, and fifth today, to model for you how you can take any standard, any piece of literature, and work through the 4 skills of creativity to create instruction that matches both the creativity skill and the standard. So for this first model here, we took a first grade standard. We're looking at RL 1.3, where we're describing characters and setting major events and stories in order to make meaning of the story. So the example here is a bad case of stripes. And if you have the PowerPoint, we've linked a YouTube video with the story so you can see it. And thinking about fluency, and if you'll remember, Jenny went back to fluency just being that ability to brainstorm lots of ideas. So with this book and this standard, thinking about ways students could brainstorm a list of sound effects that occur when Camilla changes colors. So if you've never heard the story before, it's about a character named Camilla Cream And she loves lima beans so much, but she's so worried about how people are going to think of her because, lima beans are not delicious food, but she loves them anyway. So she goes through these series of changes where she becomes the colors around her environment and the things that are being said around her environment. So if students are able to quickly brainstorm a list of sound effects that would occur when Camilla changes colors, then they're more likely to recall all of those events that have happened in the story as she changed. And then they can use the text to support their ideas. And you can imagine in a first grade class the amount of sounds they can come up with and how much fun that task would be for them. So automatic engagement. For flexibility, what we thought of where students could work with a partner to list the ways that the story could have been different if Camilla had enjoyed changing colors. So in the story, it's very concerning to Camilla that she's changing colors and she wants to find a way to make it stop. So can students think flexibly and thinking about how the story would be different if Camilla liked that? So we're going back to character development as well as the key details in the story to help them think of this. And then again, using evidence from the story to support their changes. Originality, so that one-of-a-kind idea. Can a student work with a partner to create a new solution to help Camilla stop changing that does not involve lima beans? So I gave away the end of the story here, but lima beans saved the day. But can students come up with an original idea to support helping Camilla stop changing colors that would not involve lima beans? And then they can go back and refer to the story and explain how the new solution would maybe change the meaning of that story. And then elaboration, which is always the easiest for me to think of, is an idea would be that students could pretend to be Camilla Cream. So being the thing or the person and thinking about how Camilla would feel. What would her thoughts be? What is she going to do? And just elaborating on her character. And students could include illustrations, quotation marks, speech bubbles, so really getting them to include dialogue, creating a writing piece, a storyboard, or a book where they can add Camilla's feelings, thoughts, and actions to the story. So these are just a couple of ideas. Of course, the ideas are endless, but just to give you an example of how all of the skills of creativity can align to the standard in any story, really, that you choose. So I'm going to move on, and Jenny's going to share with you a third grade example.
And I really want to reiterate what Kerri is saying. I hope you're noticing how she brings these creative strategies back to the ELA standard. You will notice, if you are not aware, students can run crazy with creativity. So you want to make sure that, I want to stress that you keep it contextually. So if it's a realistic fiction story, then we certainly wouldn't want to have the embellished piece or the elaboration piece be sci-fi. We want the genres to match. We want them to stay in the context of the story. Now, with Camilla Cream's example, there was lots of magic and fun things. So, of course, you would allow your students that same autonomy to incorporate those strategies. And so my third grade example is very similar. We're just going to break it down and use this framework with you to show you how to connect the standard. I took a different standard. I took 3.1, making inferences, and I again included dog breath. And you can, this is a text I got from the curriculum maps, and this story is about a dog named Halitosis, and she has very bad breath, and the kids have to solve this problem, otherwise the parents are going to make them get rid of the dog. And so it's a really cute story. And you can see under the fluency that we thought it would be a great idea for students to brainstorm all the positive ways that bad breath could affect you. We tend to think of everything as negative. So that's really getting them to step out and be a little more fluent in that area. And then again, we would want them to bring it back to the text. That's very important. They have to support the inferences that they're making from the story. One of the examples that I think is kind of silly, but grandma passes out from the dog breath. And one of the things the kid might come up with is maybe grandma's mean. They don't really want grandma there. It's not implied in the story, but that might be a way to look at it. And again, in doing so, as Kerri mentioned, this helps the children remember all of the other steps and parts of the story and support those inferencing skills. Flexibility, we thought students could brainstorm or list how the story might change if Hallie didn't have bad breath, or if the children were able to cure it. That would certainly change the trajectory of the story, and then the inferences would certainly be different. And so they would have to think about how they would have to reread the inferencing skills and use them differently. Originality is, to me, as Kerri said, elaboration comes easy to her. I feel like originality and elaboration are probably the easiest as well. It's just coming up with a new idea. So anytime you have them rewrite the ending, add a scene, any of those things, they're doing originality and elaboration. And I will let you look at my examples and go back to this at a time when you are in your thoughtful place. The last thing I want to add before I turn it over to Dominique in a fifth grade example is that we really want you to make sure that some of these skills are pre-taught. You would certainly never start with this skill unless you're planning on using it as a diagnostic, which I think you could certainly do. If I started out and having them identify theme, as Dominique's going to model, if they can do that on the very first day through a diagnostic choice board activity, then right there, that's your gifted kid, or that's the kid who will need enrichment. And we want teachers using diagnostics, and it doesn't always have to be in the test form. And so I'm going to let Dominique share a fifth grade example. And I hope you guys are enjoying this presentation today.
Before I share my example, I want to say that this was the first time I had ever worked with these tasks. And so I had to kind of bounce my ideas off of Jenny and Kerri. And leaning into them really made it easier to come up with my ideas for each task. And they also kept me very focused on my ELA standard. So when you're starting out working on the areas of creativity, having a group or team or someone with you to bounce ideas off of, it makes it super easy to do. It seems like it might be a little hard, but once you start working with someone else and bouncing those ideas, it's like, oh, okay, I get it. This makes sense, and it makes it easier. So I have a fifth grade example, and I'm using the standard 5.2, which is theme. I use the text Pink and Say. And so in Fluency, students will brainstorm a list of themes that would fit for this story and a list of themes that would not fit for this story. So students will reference the text and support their ideas. I love that it's getting kids to think deeper, think outside of the box. And like Jenny said, these are tasks that you wouldn't start with on day one, but almost like an assessment, summative assessment to see, have they grasped the idea of theme? And this fluency task really gets them thinking. With the flexibility, students will work with a partner to brainstorm all the ways the story might change if Pink had been injured instead of Say. So it also makes them to think about their perspective from a point of view from someone else. How might these changes affect the theme if we switch the characters, the character that's being injured? Students will provide references to the text to support these changes in the theme. And with my originality, they're going to work with a partner and rewrite the part of the story when the soldiers come to Momo Bay's house. Would this original new part of the story affect the theme? Once again, it's getting them to think deeper, not surface, just finding the theme and saying, okay, this is the theme, but being creative and thinking, how does different things change the theme, affect the theme? And with my elaboration, Pink and Say had a unique friendship. Elaborate a final scene that would continue the theme of friendship. And students will cite implicit or explicit evidence from the text to support ideas.
Thanks so much for sharing. And as Dominique has said, this takes students to a whole deeper level of thinking. So automatically, I hope you can see how the rigor is increasing with the activities that are combined with creativity. So we were thinking about how can you incorporate this kind of work through your NTI instruction? And so, choice boards have been so popular. We, of course, thought it would be an easy place to put an activity or a task right on a choice board. So we've linked here just how you might reword these tasks to fit on a choice board. And you're welcome to take these ideas if you like them or create your own, of course. But keeping in mind that you wouldn't want to put every single skill of creativity on there. So you might pick one or two on the choice board and see which one students appreciate doing. So that is there for a resource for you. And we have also created a tool that looks like the tool we've been using, where you can make a copy and plug in your standard and go ahead and start brainstorming your ideas for fluency, flexibility, originality, and elaboration. We've included the definitions of each up at the top to help you remember what students are expected to do with each skill and creativity. So that's there as a planner for you. And then lastly, I'll let Jenny speak to a Padlet that was created to help as well.
And I just want to add one more point of view from the gifted perspective. Creativity is a fairly new area that JCPS is grappling with and learning to identify. It is not new to the state nor to gifted education, but it is definitely something that's been sort of new to us. And so as we move forward, I want you to know that if you're a 4th or 5th grade teacher or up into middle and high school, embedding these strategies into an ELA classroom would count as services for your creatively gifted students. I oftentimes get teachers telling me how nervous they are because they don't know how to service these kids. And I want you to see through Kerri and Dominique and my example how easy it is to, with a little practice and some conversation with friends in a PLC, that this is just a simple notation in your lesson plans. This would count as a service for your creatively gifted kids. And it would also be a great thing to use with young children who are in primary talent pool, because you really might see some of those creative thinkers coming out in our K1 and 2 kids. And then that would help you move forward with identification year, 3rd grade. Now, back to just ELA and creativity. We have created a Padlet for you. We just thought we'd use and model another source of technology. Padlet use open to JCPS. I don't have this open to the public, so it's a safe place if you want some feedback from one of the 3 of us. We've got ELA specialists, gifted specialists, so we've got lots of information and knowledge to share, and I'm sure you're going to bring in awesome new knowledge to share with us. So that collaborative piece, as Dominique has spoken of, is very important to making sure you're kind of working together. And so if you click Kerri for us on the Padlet, will you take, oh, you're already there, thanks. So you can see we've linked our stories. We've linked a really great presentation by Sir Ken Robinson. He is a proponent of education, and he has a fabulous TED Talk on creativity. I would really encourage you to listen to that if you're interested in this topic. And so we hope to see some teachers posting or reaching out to us, because we'd love to help and support you more with combining your content area and creativity.
Thanks, Jenny. I also, linked the Sir Ken Robinson's YouTube video from his TED Talk right here. It was one of the first things I saw when getting into the creativity work, and it was very moving. So highly suggest that you take a look at that. And that's all we have today. Please follow us on Twitter, throw out any questions to us. On Twitter, you can email any of us through JCPS email. We're obviously here to support anybody who would like to brainstorm and try to tackle this a little bit. I will say I've had a couple of teachers at Carrick venture out into this world, so we're hoping to get back some good student work samples soon. But thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your rainy day.